I'm super happy to be here. I am calling in from the Netherlands, where I live. I will tell you a little bit about myself, and then a little bit more about something I feel very strongly about, which is hybrid work, and specifically hybrid workplaces. The title of my talk accordingly is having a hybrid workplace means you've failed. So you can see a little bit, although I mentioned that maybe Thomas will tell a little bit about the positive and the negative sides of it. I'm going to focus on the negative sides. And I say that with a smile because I also want to entertain you a little bit with this and get you to think about the choices that you can make about how you use your space and time within your agile practice, within your organization, right? So I have this is a weird thing to show, but it's a picture of me standing next to me, but that's just the time we live in now. This is me. Here is the bigger screen. My name is Thomas, and I work as a professional Scrum Master and as a facilitator and as an MC. So I've been happy enough even to do MC work for all of you here in Lithuania, hosting the Agile Day Kaunas event earlier this year. And of course, now that we're in Vilnius, we can all laugh about Kaunas because that's exactly what I did when I was in Kaunas. Say, oh, those people from Vilnius. I know it's a tough thing. I've been coming to Lithuania since 2017, working with distributed teams. And that's also why I want to speak a little bit about hybrid work and working together across a distance, right? So I do that a lot also on LinkedIn. If you can read really tiny text, you can see here like the little hashtags that I talk about: Scrum and facilitation, hybrid work, and Office as a tool, which is something I'll come back to again later today. I have a newsletter where I do most of the same thing and provide you with cool links and articles, as well as my own thoughts. I encourage you, of course, to all subscribe to that. But most importantly of all, we are here together today in track 4. So I'm glad that there's more than 3 people. Thank you all for joining to talk about why I think that having a hybrid workplace means that you failed. And failed at what exactly? And also, what do you mean hybrid? Or how's this going? And what does it mean to me as an agilist? So lots of questions that I want to run through with you over the course of the next, let's say half an hour, and then leave some time for questions. I have 3 chapters of my talk that I want to run through with you. And most importantly, what I want to get out of the way first is hybrid. Because in this day and age, right? So if you're watching this video somewhere in the year 2040, I'm speaking to you now from the year 2021, and it is a big deal to be talking about hybrid. And previously that meant something good. You know what this is? It's a Labradoodle. It is a combination of 2 really great things: a poodle and a Labrador retriever, right? So they were crossbred, made into a hybrid Labradoodle, because Labrador retrievers often serve as guide dogs to people who have limited visibility. But sometimes those people also have allergy against the type of hairs that those dogs shed. So someone, I think in Australia, had the great idea of, you know what, why not crossbreed a Labrador with a poodle to make something that can, or make a creature that can be trained as a guide dog, but not give people sniffles, right? That was a great idea. It worked out. I mean, I think the creator now resents it, but anyway, this was a great thing, right? Other great examples of hybrid stuff. It's a picture of my car. It's still in the garage here, at least. I mean, it's standing out front of my house now. Also a hybrid, right? I mean, if you look out your window right now, you'll probably see 1 or more Bolt cars going by, and they're all Priuses or something similar, right? Also a good thing where hybrid was something good, or meant to be something good, combining a combustion engine with an electric battery or machinery that works together to have a bit more fuel efficiency, to go faster, maybe have a little bit of a lighter load in the environment as well, right? So these are good hybrid things. But when we talk about hybrid these days, it's not usually about anything good. And as an example of that, I have this, which I found in my closet. It's still showing my car. This is a hybrid spray. I will show you on a different screen, and then I'll hold it up. Here's the view from my desk. Check it out, hybrid spray. And it says in Dutch, for dry shoes and clothing. And why, do you ask, is this spray? Well, you can spray it onto objects, but it is hybrid because it combines properties of, oh yeah, this looks terrible, it's very shiny, properties of resisting dirt and also protection from moisture. And that's great. I mean, I'm not trying to sell you this product, but you probably have something similar up there. You get a bit more snow than we do here in the Netherlands. This is a good hybrid thing, but here we already see a downside of hybrid. And that is because, as you can see here, this is highly flammable and it's kind of irritating. And I think the combination of these two things are like what we often think about these days when we talk about hybrid from the perspective of work. So within the context of knowledge work, hybrid means, oh, here's an empty sheet, sorry. Within the context of knowledge work, hybrid means a combination of two things. And I argue that it's a combination of two things that brings out the worst in both, as opposed to the labradoodle that we just saw. So they are like participating from afar with a little group and participating from a local location with another little group, and then trying to make it work. Also arranging your office space and your time around that. It's all kind of vague and it's very inefficient and very impractical. I think you should stay the hell away from it. Now, I said in knowledge work, because if you're a doctor or a farmer or someone else who contributes positively through actual labor and creating something, and you're bound to a certain location, then this obviously does not really apply to you. But as long as you are doing knowledge work and you can do your job by being at a computer, this is for you, right? So I promised there would be 3 chapters. This is already chapter 0. I want to take you through 3 things that have to do with hybrid to illustrate a point and to make a point about how you and I should deal with hybridity, so to speak, in the workplace from a perspective of being agile. And the first thing, I think the inroad that everybody deals with for hybrid is meetings. So that's where I'll start. Hybrid meetings are the bane of my existence, and I think maybe of yours as well. And that's because I think that meetings represent an accessibility issue. They already did. I mean, it's not just the purview of a hybrid meeting, but it matters if you're in the room or not, so to speak, right? So hybrid meetings on that level are not helping anyone because there's an imbalance of information. Right, the level of access you have to information and to participation, to decision making, is not the same for people being like local, physically present, and virtually present at a distance. It's the same way that eyesight gives you different access to information that's being shared or made available, or full mobility will give you an easier entrance into a building that has stairs, right? That sort of stuff. It's the same with meetings in essence. So if you thrive in a meeting session and you're kind of extroverted, that's a really nice place to be. But if you're not, and or you have to come from a really long way, or you have to bring your kids to school first and that sort of stuff, there's kind of a higher threshold to getting to a meeting. That's the case that it already was, right? So that was the playing field we had before we started working in a virtual fashion together, at least at scale, right? Now the thing is, that was how it was, right? Going into a building, to go into a meeting room, to have a meeting, to make a decision, to create value somehow. Recently, this is a very big cliche, but you all know it. The past 2 years, we had a new playing field, and that is the playing field where no one had access to the meeting room, right? So not if you happen to be in a wheelchair and it was difficult to get in, or you couldn't get there in time, or your kid had the sniffles and you had to stay home, that sort of stuff. Now, everyone had the same level of access to meetings and to working together because it was all virtual. Right, there's a different playing field, and I argue that playing field is far more level and more accessible than what we had before, when you had to go to a physical location for it. Right, now none of us could get together, and it's not like there were no thresholds anymore, but they are different, right? Because it's for sure a learning curve to being comfortable using a computer to connect to people and to learn how to switch on and off the camera and the microphone, that sort of stuff. But those learning curves are shorter and less steep than the learning curve of learning to, I don't know, thrive in an office setting, and that being the only option you have for participation, right? So the thresholds are different. There's no longer a commute. The thing is just, going back to hybrid, now that it's no longer necessary for everyone to be in a virtual space, at least for now. I know that lockdown is still a risk, even though it's a politically controversial issue in Lithuania, but we have the same numbers or development of numbers here in the Netherlands. So I hope that this winter we can all still go outside. But anyway, now that it is theoretically possible to go back into an office space, we still want to accommodate people that aren't there. And then you end up doing hybrid stuff, right? And I say it with a strange accent because those meetings are kind of weird, right? So I was saying hybrid meetings aren't helping anyone, and that's because in order to take place, a hybrid meeting has to intentionally make the experience worse for people in the room and try to accommodate for like unsolvable problems for people that are outside the room. So by design, these things are like so terrible that they can't give level access to anyone, and it's not fun for people either in the room because they have to mind how they speak, not crosstalk, but also not for people outside the room because invariably they're missing some information, right? And I argue that hybrid is what happens if you don't make a choice, right? Hybrid meetings are harder to do. They increase the cognitive load for everyone involved. The risk of failure and waste is way higher because things can go wrong in multiple levels at the same time. On top of that, the best case scenario for a hybrid meeting is something with a level of success that's lower than either of the two alternatives. And by that, I mean completely virtual or completely physical, so to speak. So I think that it is I'm not mincing my words here, but it's a terrible mistake to consciously aim for hybrid meetings, right? There is no upside to them, and there should also not be any reason to have them. And I think that's a mind shift that I want to challenge you to make. And I know, of course, my trusty companion, here's a little Jabra table microphone that has saved my hide on many an occasion. If you're in a big meeting room and people are dialing in and stuff, you need good audio. It's great. If you want to spend a lot more money, you can get like a meeting owl, which has an integrated camera. It's all fun and games, but it will never get to a level that is either as good as everybody being virtual or everybody being in the room. So I think that if you design meetings to be hybrid, right, on purpose, then you're missing out and you're making things more difficult for everybody involved. So I think meetings should by design be either entirely in person or entirely virtual. And this is kind of what I want to bring to you, right? So I mentioned it already, but this is where you'll get involved, because I think that as a professional change agent, which you are if you're working in the Agile space, maybe a lot of you are, yes, you sir there with the orange sweater in the back. I'm emulating being in the same room as you, but I know that you are a Scrum Master, and there's someone else, you're a product owner, maybe there's an Agile coach here, you could be a business analyst, you could even be a developer. And if you're in the Agile space, that means that you understand the concept of iterative development and inspecting and adapting to improve, right? And that makes it your responsibility, in my opinion, to help others within your company that don't have that luggage, right, that background, understand that they shouldn't settle for hybrid or for an office. But I'll get to that in a minute, right? So I think that as a professional change agent, which is what I'll then call you, you should help your teams and companies organize accordingly. That brings me to chapter 2 of 3. So we're moving right along. That is hybrid work, right? To help your colleagues and your people deal with, let's say, a distributed reality, right? Not hybrid, but distributed reality. I think that it is important to enable and encourage a digital first mindset. And I see people like shivering when they hear this sort of language being used, because digital first, what does that really even mean? And isn't that the kind of thing that salespeople try to get people onboarded on? And it's kind of an empty term, but in this case, now it really matters, because having a digital first mindset will make it possible for you to conduct meetings regardless of where people are going to be. It's far easier to have people in the same space using digital means, if you have to change on a dime, than it is to try to digitize a physical experience that you designed for people that are digitally present as well, right? So if these things change because maybe somebody has a cold, or you get tested and it's positive, you can't come into the office, that sort of stuff, then you need to be able to pivot quickly. And it makes much more sense, far more sense, to work with digital artifacts than with physical ones, right? So don't count on in-person presence anymore. And even if you are, then you can still use the digital artifacts, right? And that's up to you, because as these change agents, agilists, you touch certain artifacts all the time. I bet that you all use Jira or some sort of, or DevOps, or like something to track. Well, that's a good example of something that's already a digital artifact, right? That's where your product backlog lives. So doing that, encouraging people to go digital first, or to think that way, goes hand in hand with something that David Rock calls one virtual, all virtual. And we're staying within the realm of shudder-inducing terms, because this sounds probably also really a little bit awkward. But this comes with what I said before. So it's like graceful degradation from software development, right? So if one thing doesn't work, and I know we should be talking about progressive enhancement, but in this case, the risk makes it important to talk about graceful degradation. If you can't be all present, if that's what you were designing for, then somebody becomes virtual, then what you should do is not like try to mix things up, like go virtual, but go hybrid, but go virtual. So everyone then should be like using their computer, going into a different room, so don't sit in the same meeting room, that sort of stuff. Right, so that flexibility becomes possible if you manage to ingrain this in a way of working of your team, your organization. I have a couple of examples for you. Pictures of people. It's always good to have pictures of people, or cats, or dogs. And now I go 2 for 3 because I don't have a picture of a cat, but I for sure had that Labradoodle. And now it's a bunch of people. Here, these are some examples of what happens when you don't optimize for that, right? And I think that these examples might speak to you, because I think that they are what you run into on a near daily basis as well in your work that has a location attached to it. Anyway, this was a picture of 2020, early 2020 or late 2019. I was with a company called Find Hotel, and I did a workshop with them during a product backlog refinement. And it was super fun. And I had this beautiful picture, which of course is good. If you're a facilitator, you like to have these, oh, that's a wrong thing, but you like to have the nice pictures like this. These are people interacting. They're touching a board, a whiteboard. They're really writing stuff down or moving stickies. They're clearly decision-making and collaborating. It's really great. The only thing that could be better is that, as you can see, these are all dudes, right? So 4 white guys standing in a row, 2 of them bald. So that would never fly on a stock photo website. It can still fly at certain conferences, though. You could go to an Agile conference in 2021 with 33 speakers and see that 30 of them are white men. That's the kind of diversity mistake that we should be moving away from for conferences, and also for pictures like this. And it's really not the point I was trying to make, because be that as it may, these people were doing the work together, but they were not alone, because their colleague Gilberto, our colleague Gilberto, had gotten a cold earlier that day. So he couldn't join in, but for sure he was there. Check it out. This is the reverse angle of that picture. Here are 3 of those guys that fit into the frame. They're looking at that board, and in the background you can see a very much not involved Gilberto, right? So there's a guy leaning back in his home office. I'll show it here a bit smaller. but you get the point. So we pivoted, but we didn't pivot far enough, because this was the view for Gilberto. He sort of participated, but he couldn't participate fully because this is what he saw. And in fact, he saw even worse thing, because you can imagine it was me taking this photograph, standing behind these guys, which meant I stood in front of his camera, which meant you can also see my bald spot. And it's even less access to what people were doing, right? So I thought, okay, you know what? I'll take a picture of what's on that board, because it was different features that were being mapped. And then I send it to him so that he can also see, but he can't touch that. He can't move it. He has to instruct someone else to do something. And the bandwidth for participating is far lower than for any of these guys standing at that board, right? So he kind of wandered off. You saw him in his chair, like sitting, leaning back, and you can't blame him, right? So that's not really how we should solve this. I mean, it was good, well-intentioned, but it's not a good solution. You could, for instance, bring people closer to what they're working on. Here's a different example. A year earlier, I was at a company called Lietuva, hosting company in the Netherlands. They were partially distributed. They're what we would call hybrid today. And here you see on the right, my colleague Sjoerd, and on the left, my colleague Hashir, who wasn't in the same office. So he's now represented by this laptop, you know, and what we were doing was doing a sort of, talking about a legacy code block within a customer portal that we didn't really want to touch, or want to touch as little as possible to get some results. And we were talking about it, writing little sticky notes, same recipe. You see the pattern here. It was on the wall, and we were helping Hashir out understand what we were talking about by holding up the camera to this wall. I bet that some of you have done the same type of thing, and it's great because you help people see what's there. But the problem is, it shouldn't have been like that in the first place. If you pivot to doing things together while you're distributed from each other, you have to pivot a little bit further and just touch the same artifacts by going digital first. I have one more and then I'll stop. This is fun. This was in Vilnius also in 2017. Here you see a bunch of my colleagues. We'll zoom in a little bit. We were having a meeting, right? So it's very visible. These people are mega busy. Like I have a full phone memory of pictures like this. It's great. But what you see here is people collaborating on something. What you also see in the background is that there is a big TV screen and a camera that we're definitely not using, because yeah, who knows how to operate those little camera thingies that are in meeting rooms, right? You want to get going. So you bring your own hardware, like my little Jabra thingy. Anyway, so we were there. Most of us were there physically, but some of us were not. So here is a smaller view. Here you see my previous laptop and my boss's laptop. And as you can see on the screen, there were some people remotely present. And that's, I guess, the best we can say about it. They were remotely present. That's a pity, right? So this was also well-intentioned and we really made a nice headway, but in that room were people from the Netherlands, from Lithuania, from Poland, from Germany. What else did we have? Oh yeah, and then there were people from Ukraine and Bulgaria that didn't get flown in, and they were then participating from afar. And it's well-intentioned, but all of these things, they are they're not good enough. You know what I mean? We can already do better. And these are old pictures, right? I said it like for 2019, 2017, and everybody there is very well intentioned, but they are what we would today call hybrid collaboration or hybrid office, and it's just not good enough because of the access that people have. Right? So you want to collaborate as a cross-functional team or group of teams to create something of value, and you put in work to do retrospectives every sprint, that sort of stuff, to get better at collaborating and communicating. And this should also be on your list and on your radar as an agilist of like improving this sort of stuff, so that access needs to be better. This should just have been a Miro board or something like that. Or if you want to really get together with each other, right? You can also design an experience that is physically co-located, but then be physically co-located and then also fly in your Bulgarian colleagues. Because if you can't make it all, then you should just maybe move the meeting. That's also a possibility. Right? The worst thing that could happen is not making a clear choice for either one, and that's represented in all these pictures, and then you end up in the middle that nobody asks for. That's a pity, right? So I say that you should help your organization commit to truly level access to meetings and to work by using digital means if necessary, or at least to open up that conversation with people. So the worst thing that you could do is just go back to an office, quote unquote, by default, because that's possible. Then you skip a step, you lose something, right? You should avoid hybrid by adopting digital first, with one virtual, all virtual as the leading principle. If you start with that, you're prepared for like changing into multiple directions. And this has consequences. And I'm now coming to the last part of my, I would say rant, but my well-considered opinion that I hope to present to you for consideration. Anyway, that has consequences for how we look at our workplace as well, right? Hybrid workplace, as you can remember the title of my talk, if you have one, then I think that you've failed. You end up in one if you don't make clear decisions. And I think it bears repeating, bears understanding that we need to make a little mind switch, right? Work is not a place, but an activity. And you've probably heard other people say something similar, but I hope to put it into a context or a framing that it makes sense for decision making. Because if work is not a place but an activity, then work and office are not the same. So don't let anyone like blanket statement over that, right? So there are people who have a vested interest in getting you into an office space, and those people are usually managers of some kind. Of course, we all love managers, have managers, and or we are managers, also great. And probably you're better than the worst examples that people like me enjoy talking about. But those are the people that then make a decision. Okay, we can, so we will go back to the office, and I'd like to see you again in the office. So these types of decisions treat office as a sort of panopticon, you know, that concept from a prison where everybody sees and watches each other. And it's like the Taylorist wet dream of having a factory floor with a raised desk for the person overseeing what other people are doing, because that's not level access. It's command and control. And yeah, we're not there. Not only that, we have proven in the past 2 years that we can perfectly do our knowledge work from different locations. I mean, perfectly, look, I understand, right? It's not so fun when your kids and your dog are in the same apartment and you're trying to do a video call and that sort of stuff, right? But that's mainly or mostly a problem when we try to mimic the same thing that we were doing in an office before and just transplanting it to your kitchen. That doesn't work. You need to adapt and improve a little bit there. And I'm saying you, but what I mean is one should be doing that. I hope that you've been doing that sort of inspecting and adapting already. And I would say, don't stop doing that, but just keep doing that. And that also means don't just for the sake of it go back to an office, because it's not the same as doing work. An office is not a fixed enclosure. I recommend you see it as a tool. My good friend Laurens Hoek, a software architect at the Dutch National Broadcasting Company, he says, you know, office is not a place, but it should be a tool, and that makes so much sense to me, because then it means that you can choose to use it. Like if the thing that you happen to want to achieve together or by yourself makes sense to be doing in a shared space or in a space where you have certain things available to you, then you should do it. Right, so then it can be a wonderful tool, but probably it doesn't look like a foosball table standing next to your desk while you're trying to do focused work, right? So you have to choose to use it if it makes sense. Therefore, it should also be possible to choose not to use it if it doesn't make sense. So if you want to get together for something, by all means, design something around that, but then you don't have to say, I'm in the office every Monday or something like that. Go to an office and make an appointment with people that you need for the work that you need. It needs to make sense. And designing a hybrid office means designing for poor accessibility. So that's like the absolute worst thing you could do, with little booths so people can have their video calls because you can't do that in an open plan office where everybody's having a different call with different people and it just sounds really terrible, then just don't go to an office space, right? You can do that from home. You already know how to do it. You've probably optimized for some audio experience. If you design an office around that part of being hybrid, then you've essentially lost the game, so to speak. And I say that, but I'm not the only one. I have a quote here from a guy called Zuijlen. He writes a newsletter, still not very big, but Ed writes a newsletter, and he was talking a lot this August about hybrid work. And he says, I've highlighted it, any company that's going hybrid is admitting that the office is unnecessary, because if it was necessary, you'd need to be there all the time. You know what I mean? So if going hybrid is presented as something good, that it just means that people are trying to pull you back into an office, and it cannot be a blanket statement. It should be a well-considered choice, right? Zuijlen also says, like, those that want to go into the office should have to justify it. That's also what managers don't like. From my experience currently working in a governmental organization, they don't like to say why they want to have you in an office. And it usually comes down to seeing co-workers, right? That say, yeah, it's good for social contacts. But those are two like related concepts that are not the same. I was in a workshop with a department at that governmental organization I currently work with, and I asked her with some desperation, but look, if you're so keen on going back to the office, right? What question is office the answer? And she looked at me, and without like a blink, she said, "Oh, well, social connection." And like I was flabbergasted, right? So I thought, oh, that actually sounds good. I was kind of bowled over by that. But then after the session, I thought, wait a second. So does that mean if my mom calls me and she says, "Oh, honey, I haven't seen you for so long," that I would say, "Oh, mom, let's go to the office. We have some opportunity to do social connecting there." Or your friend calls you and they said, "Oh man, we really need to go to the office again because I haven't seen you for so long." I personally would prefer to go to a pub or something like that, or welcome to my home, right? And I'm turning that into a little bit of a joke. But the thing is, social connection is not the same as being in an office, but being in an office can for sure contribute to social connection. It's just that standing in line for coffee doesn't automatically make you a tight-knit team. So if you're thinking that those things are the same, managers, then you're just being lazy at your job. And you should design experiences around connecting. And that can be online or in person as well. Now, I have a lot of these kinds of opinions and thoughts, right? But they all revolve around being able to choose what you want to do, where you want to do for optimizing your knowledge work. So again, if you're a farmer or a doctor, this isn't for you. But for those of us doing knowledge work with computers, this applies to you. And especially within the Agile community, I hope that if you see some value in my statements around accessibility and level access and about self-organization, then I hope that you will carry that forward a little bit in your own work to help your organizations, right? So in summary, what I hope you'll take away is that Office should be a tool that you may employ or may not. And it can be in a beautiful spot in Vilnius Tech Park. It can be at your co-workers' dinner table if they have a particularly good whiteboard on the wall or something like that. But it can also be on Tenerife. It can be with your entire team. You can get creative about it, and it's not weird. It's just designing and choosing for yourself, right? So keep going and don't settle for a hybrid workplace, because they are the anti-labradoodles, if you will, right? The worst of two worlds. You should optimize for accessibility, because aiming for a hybrid is like directly choosing for subpar experience for everyone involved. And as agilists, you should help your organizations choose. Right? This can be a conversation as well. I mean, I'm talking at you and you think, oh God, this guy, but it doesn't have to be for forever either, right? We do inspect and adapt in multiple cycles. So help your organizations do exactly that, so that you can learn from your experience. That's the core of agility, I think. And I hope that you will remember one virtual, all virtual as a sort of principle to adhere to, because I think it can truly make a difference in a joint or, God forbid, hybrid meeting experience. So I think you should adapt beyond hybrid, right? Pandemic restrictions made you rely on yourself to make some hard choices to become or to stay productive. And I think you shouldn't stop now, right? Now that you have this and that your colleagues have also tasted self-organization or self-management, we should keep doing it. So don't stop, and let's strive beyond the mediocrity of hybrid and have a more goal-oriented, agile, and inclusive work life. Because really, if you're having a hybrid workplace, that means that you failed. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for very attractive, involving in this presentation, and you presented what advantage and what reasons to choose one another tool. I remember one person says that it will be privileged in the future to work in office bureau, because nowadays it will be privileged. Not all are able to do it, so to work in that way. We have one question from our when should you not employ office as a tool? How could you answer that question?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you can think of the types of work that you do and plot it in two axes, right? One being synchronicity of your work. I'm looking for a piece of paper. Synchronicity of your work, and the other being if you need to do something together with it. I'm terribly prepared. I will quickly draw it. And I think that, let's switch the camera. Oh, it's valuable time, Thomas. Here, look. So if you make an axis like this, then it is synchronous or asynchronous, and alone, I don't know if you can see it, or together. And I think that if you here plot things that you do, right, and having a meeting doesn't count, because a meeting should be about something or to achieve stuff. I'm trying to draw like little post-it notes. So if you plot the things that you have to do, that your work consists of, like this, then the stuff that that is useful to do in an office happens, or that you could possibly use an office for, in this quadrant. So things that you want to have a synchronous, together experience about. You know what I mean? So things that you want to do at the same time, that can't be in a relay race, like you work a little bit on the document, I pick it up from the document enclosure, and then I work a little bit further, but things that you really want to do live at the same time and with other people, those you can consider useful for going to an office, wherever that might be, right? It could also be on Tenerife.
Yeah, maybe it is the same. You answered the question. If 5 team members is in office, but 1 is remote, so we should make meeting as though everyone is remote via Zoom using Miro or other tools. This maybe
yes.
is the same question that you answered.
Yeah, I think you really should, because and there's a good it feels weird, right? Especially if there's only one person that's away, but it's not necessarily always the same person that's not physically present, right? So that can rotate. And by doing it this way, you don't have to sit together in a meeting room, or if you do, you need to be really careful with muting mics and that sort of stuff. You train everybody into using the same artifacts and having that same sort of access, so that the next time that they're not in the office, they can be shown the same sort of courtesy, and there's no delay or no lack of accessibility for anyone.
Also, we have one question. If you look from different angle, let's say people used to work in the office all the time, and now you don't want to scare them that they are obligated to get to the office after COVID is over. How should we call such model to make it appealing and logical?
So you don't want to, see if I understand correctly, you don't want to like scare people by saying you can go to the office, but you could if you wanted to.
Yes, because if you look from different angle, let's say people used to work in the office all the time, and now you don't want to scare them that they are obligated to go to the office after COVID is over. How should we call such model to make it appear ecological? I understand if people are afraid to do a COVID situation, they will obligate to visit, to use that office model. It maybe is also a little bit stressful for employees.
Oh yeah, okay. So I'm a Scrum Master, and the one thing I always have in my back pocket is the question or the statement, take it to the team. You could ask them how they would want to use the space. So you don't have to impose it, and but you could say, because we now can come back to the office, you're free to do so, but maybe we have to talk about it because you want to keep some distance from your colleagues, or what do you need to feel comfortable in the office space, so that even if a colleague is coughing, you don't feel too terrible about it, or you can make it then like transparent, and you can talk about it together. So like a really crappy answer probably, but I would say have the conversation about that and ask what people need. It
is always difficult to find one best solution for all cases. Also, one question I tried to read them very quickly. All online meetings have their own drawbacks, where people multitask and not participate in the meetings. Being physically in the rooms allows to avoid that. But how can we utilize that, having teams across several countries? Do you have any recommendation on this virtual experience where everyone are equal participating? 1 minute left.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I was just demonstrating how easy it is to do something else while you're also in a room. Not to be mean. I understand where it comes from, right? So it feels there's a lower threshold for doing something else while you're online and distributed. But in the room, people can still do different things. You don't know if they're actually present, and that mental presence that's important in both co-located and distributed fashion. You have to make an agreement about it with teams and create an atmosphere where it is okay to ask, like, are you really present here? Or to say, hey, I think we're missing your voice here. So facilitation can help you. And what you can also do is a check-in at the beginning of a session, where you just ask people like traffic light signal, like red, yellow, or green. Are you with us at the moment? And if people then say, not really, because I'm here, but my mind is on the presentation that I have to give tomorrow, then you could have a conversation about that. Say, okay, maybe we do the meeting at another time. That can also be a consequence. So those are things that you could do. Far longer than 1 minute.
Okay. Okay. It was very, very good. Thank you for such good involving into Agile way of thinking. Thank you for your presentation, for your experience. Okay, bye-bye. We'll see you next time in Vilnius.
All right, looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone.